Hello, hello. Welcome, 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 everyone. I am Kay Wilson here with you again this beautiful Wednesday with our live training for the middle of the week. As you guys enter in and join me here, as per usual, let me know where you're joining from. Today, we'll be talking about applying for a visitor's visa. So if you notice that our theme that we had this past week covered applying for a visitor's visa to come to Canada. Now, of course, we're in the middle of a pandemic still, and it has been looking better, but we're not, completely out the woods yet. So if you would have joined me some time ago when we talked about the lifting of the restrictions, the easing of the restrictions rather, because it's not completely lifted. Welcome, guys. I see Ariana from Barbados. Welcome, Swasti from Jamaica. Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining. Glad to have you. So we're joined by some folks on IG as well as our friends on Facebook. All right. So if you guys were a part of our previous sessions, you would have known that we covered traveling to Canada in the midst of the pandemic and the easing of restrictions. So currently, just a little recap for those who missed it. So as of August 9th, American citizens and permanent residents who are vaccinated can travel to Canada now for non-essential purposes. So essentially for tourism purposes, right? So if you were following previously, you would have known that as it is right now, Canada has a travel restriction in place for most countries. And we were previously only able to travel to Canada for discretionary reasons, right? So not tourism or anything like that. So now with the changes, okay, Amarachi from Nigeria, welcome. Glad to see you on, my friend. And yeah, so now with the changes, they have allowed, effective as of August 9th, you can now enter Canada from the United States as an American citizen or permanent resident if you are vaccinated. Now, the plan currently is to extend that to the rest of the world. And that would be coming for September 7th, tentative. So that's a tentative date that the government have set. Of course, that will be dependent on how things progress over the next little bit, right? So you'd have to keep following us for more updates on that. And as soon as we have more information about that, we will let you guys know. So, in light of all of that, we've been getting a lot of questions about traveling to Canada, and you hear my little toddler in the background, guys. So yeah, we've been getting a lot of questions about traveling to Canada and applying for a visa, right? So I know a lot of you may need a visa in order to come to Canada. So what does that look like? That's what we'll be looking at today briefly. So I will be touching on the requirements for applying for a visitor's visa. How do you do that? What is the process that's involved with that application? And what's the timeline? I don't even want to touch on the timeline because I think a lot of people will get discouraged by the timelines that we have in place right now. And of course, it's been significantly impacted by what's happening with the pandemic and the restrictions and so on. So it's almost as though, not almost, but applications essentially for a visitor's visa were still being accepted, but not being processed as per normal because we're not, IRCC is not operating as normally, right? And if you guys are watching the replay, comment below and let me know, just like everybody else, where you're joining me from. Say hi. I will definitely respond to your comments. All right. So just a little bit of statistics. So in 2019 alone, Canada had a record of 22 million visitors. Of course, that is a lot, right? That's more than half of the population in Canada alone. So 22.1 million visitors were recorded based on Statistics Canada's record. 22.1 million visitors. And then, of course, not everybody who apply to come to Canada will be accepted. So the just imagine the number of applications that they receive. And we can also request that information. So the record for previous years was 21 million, right? So that increased in 2019. And then, of course, that would have gone down in 2020 as a result of the pandemic, right? So, so one of the lowest population densities in the world, that's Canada. And to consider that we had that many visitors is quite fascinating. So, where are some of the places that people go in Canada when you come? So, the most common tourist destinations that people will travel to in Canada, of course, there is Banff. Like if you have never been to Banff in Canada, that's in the Canadian Rocky Mountains. That's definitely one place that you have to see. It's breathtaking. Like you look at the images and you're thinking it can't be real. So there's the Banff National Park and the Canadian Rockies, so the Rocky Mountains. And guys, just imagine like when you're going there in the summer months, you're seeing the mountain peaks and they still have ice on them, like in the prime of the summer. It's really fascinating. It's something to see. There is Niagara Falls, of course, in Ontario. There is the CN Tower, which is another popular tourist destination. That's in Toronto. There's Canada's Wonderland. Again, that's in Ontario. There's the Old Quebec. So that's of course, in the province of Quebec. Parliament Hill in Ottawa. So Ottawa is Canada's capital. So a lot of things to see and do there as well. There is Toronto Islands, the Northern Lights in the northern part of Canada. So if you're going to like northern Manitoba, even northern Saskatchewan, in the Yukon, there is they call it the Northern Lights or the aurora borealis. So that's where you see it looks like some green lights in the sky. That's just my description of it. And then so there's old Montreal as well. There's quite a bit to see. And if you visit even this side of the world in the prairies, it's something else too. All flatlands, as far as your eyes can see, it's flat and it's really beautiful. So a lot to see where Canada is concerned, a lot to explore. So definitely, at least, even if you never live here, you at least want to visit and see for yourself how beautiful it is. Yes, it is very beautiful, very beautiful. And if you've been here before, comment below. Let me know who has visited Canada before. Like, where have you been? Have you visited Canada and where? And I still have, and I've been here a really long time, and I still have a lot to see of Canada. I've been to a lot of the provinces, but there's still some more to see. So let me know where you guys have been if you've been to Canada before. Okay, so Danny, Montreal. Okay, so Montreal is in Quebec, and it's actually the French province. They handle their own immigration stuff, so they have their own laws and everything there. Niagara Falls, okay. Sherry says I've visited Canada 4 times. Saskatoon, all right. So that's in my neck of the woods, down here in Saskatchewan. Saskatoon is beautiful too. And Shireen says Niagara Falls is a beautiful place. Absolutely. There is the Canadian side and then there's the US side of Niagara Falls. And they have a huge casino there. They have lots of sightseeing. Daddy says I couldn't understand a thing. Yeah, so it's predominantly French in Quebec. So yeah, there's quite a bit to see on your visit to Canada. So if you never, I know a lot of you, your dream is to live here, and it's an absolutely life-changing experience. But if you never get to live in Canada, you at least want to visit. You want to experience the Canadian winter. It's different. Let me tell you this: Canada is. I get inquiries sometimes like, where in Canada where is it in Canada? It's not too cold, or I don't want to go anywhere cold. But guess what? If you're coming to Canada, just change your mindset. It's all in the mind. I'm from the Caribbean, of course. Nice, warm, sunny. It's always hot. And I am living in Regina, in Saskatchewan. Okay. Regina's temperatures in the winter gets to the minus 30s. Like we have at least a couple of weeks of consistent minus 30s every year. And it gets colder. It's gone to minus 40s. And and it sounds colder than it really is. And to be very frank, anywhere that you go in Canada, it's going to be cold. That's just the way it is, right? There are some places where it's milder than others, like in British Columbia, very beautiful. Um, they don't get their winters are not as cold as in other places, but they still experience the winter, and there are years when it's like nothing is normal. They get a lot of snow sometimes, some extraordinary, kind of like not as extreme as what we're seeing right now with a pandemic, but there are things that will happen. I hope everyone can hear me. Gold Goldburn, I think you should probably check your audio settings. Yeah, so somebody else said I've been to Toronto and I did the Ripley's Aquarium, Wonderland, etc. Yeah, awesome. Okay, awesome. All right, yeah. So definitely a lot of places to see, but generally Canada will be cold. It is cold. You just have to make up your mind that you'll have to deal with it. You dress properly, and it really you don't even remember that it's cold, honestly, in the winter. So don't worry about that. It's a and you at least want to experience at least one winter. There's a lot of activities to do even in the winter. So now, as it relates to applying for a visitor's visa, when you apply for a visa, well, firstly, how do you apply for a visa? Right? You will make an application online. So this application is done online. You can apply for a multiple entry visa, or it can be a visa that is a single entry. You don't get to choose at this point. So the visa officer that is reviewing your application will determine the length of the visa that's granted to you based on your application, right? Now, the validity of the visa will not be granted beyond the validity of your passport. So that's something to consider. So that's a little tip there. When you're applying for a visitor's visa, you want to ensure that you have enough time remaining on your passport. So if they wanted to give you a 10-year multiple entry visa, and you only have 2 or 3 years remaining on your passport, you will only get that 2 or 3 years. You will not get any visa issued beyond the validity of your passport. So that's one. A visitor's visa is an entry document. So it allows you to enter Canada, right? So that's your approval that you must apply for before coming to Canada. If you are from a country that does not require a visa, then you're applying for the ETA, so an electronic travel authorization. So, regardless, you need to apply before coming to Canada for something for approval, right? Um, so, you'll have to assess, depending on where you're from, to see whether you need a visa or you need to apply for an ETA. Now, of course, even with your visa, that does not guarantee that you'll be allowed to enter Canada. So when you're coming, when you're at the airport, when you're at the point of entry, you still have to um, demonstrate that the same conditions upon which you met when your visa was approved, you are still meeting those and nothing has really significantly changed. One of which might be when you're coming to Canada, you want to demonstrate that you have sufficient funds to cover the cost of your stay. And you guys will see me looking back and forth because we're multi-streaming here. So um yeah, so you definitely want to consider that. All right. So the holder of a visa can remain in Canada for at least up to 6 months. So you can remain up to 6 months in one stay with a regular visa. And if you have what is called a super visa, so this is actually a different type of visa we can talk about at another time. But with a super visa, you are able to stay for up to 2 years. But that is really for parents and grandparents. So that's a separate type of visa. Now, when you're in Canada on a visitor's visa and you want to stay beyond the 6 months, so even though you may not see a stamp in your passport saying 6 months, you only have 6 months stay, right? And sorry, guys, I have my toddler here today. Yeah, so you only have 6 months stay, even if you don't see a stamp in your passport, right? And if you want to stay beyond that 6 months, um, you will have to apply for an extension. So they'll issue a visitor record at that time. All right. You must also note that having a visitor's visa does not allow you to work or study in Canada. So please note that. So when you get here, you're not violating the conditions of your stay, right? So that's something to note. Also, when you are applying for a visa, you must submit sufficient evidence that you intend to leave Canada at the end of your stay. Right, that's important. So it's a temporary document, and the idea is that you're coming to Canada not to stay, but to leave at the end of your stay. So when you're applying, you have to demonstrate that, right? You must also prove that you have sufficient funds to to cover you during the duration of your stay in Canada. If you have a host in Canada, they can actually help to offset some of the amounts that you will be required to show. All right. So those of you who may have family or friends in Canada, they can actually be your host, and they in a time like that, they will issue an invitation letter. Okay. So that's how that works. And look, we're joined by my toddler guys. You want to say hi? You want to say hi? You want to say hi? All right, all right. Okay, so yeah, so that's how that works as it relates to the requirements. So that's something that you will have to bear in mind. Just give me one moment, guys. Okay, my 2-year-old decided to join me today. Hopefully you guys can still see me. All right, so those are some of the requirements that I wanted to note where that's concerned. Then the next thing is your host, who you guys on Instagram can still see me. So the host must be able to also prove that they have sufficient funds if they're gonna be hosting you, right? So that would come in the form of an invitation letter. That would come in the form of their financial documents. So maybe a job letter, pay stub, stuff like that. If you are not showing those things, right? So that's one tip there for you. So that's something that you will have to show as well. Now, for those who don't have a host in Canada, it's not a requirement. So don't be disheartened by that. You don't need a host, you don't need an invitation letter. It's not a mandatory requirement. In the absence of that, what I recommend though is to have a travel plan, have an itinerary, know where you're going to stay and what you're going to do for each day of your trip. So, for example, if you're staying for 2 weeks in Canada, I would, if I am working on your application, I would want to show what you will be doing in those 2 weeks. And I would also want to show that you have sufficient funds for that stay. So I often get the questions, how much money do I need when I am coming to Canada? Right? If I'm going to be applying for a visitor's visa to come to Canada, how much really do I need to show? And the answer is it depends. We don't have an exact amount. It really depends. And it depends on a number of factors, right? How long are you going to stay? What are you going to do in Canada? Um, do you have a host? Do you not have a host? There are a number of factors. So I can't say, oh, you need 1,000 Canadian or you need 2,000. It depends on your specific case, right? So that's something to bear in mind. So the host, you also, if you have a host, you also want to prove your relationship. So that needs to be established. What is this person to you? And is it a friend? Is it a family member? Who are they? Right? So that's something to note as well. Now, as it relates to your proof of funds, like I mentioned, there's no base figure that you'll have to come up with. So you don't need $1 million, right? Um, you will have to indicate on your application though how much you have, and it's not even so much about the funds. I mean, when you're looking about a visitor's visa, there are three things to consider: your purpose of visit. Why do you want to visit Canada? Your proof of funds, and your ties to your home country. How established are you in your home country, and how can you demonstrate that in your application? So those are the three factors to consider when you're doing that. Okay. And then, like I said, if we are working on your application, that's something that we would definitely be looking at. And then we will give you a list of documents that you can come up with, that you can gather in order to make that application. Now, for those who apply and were refused, you do have some options. So if you have applied in the past for a visitor's visa, it doesn't preclude you from applying again. You can apply again, but before applying again, what we usually recommend is to get the case notes on your application. So if you were refused in the past, why were you refused? We want to know that before we apply again. Okay. And that is something that we would also request prior to making a second application, because we don't want to apply blindly. Some of the common reasons why people get refused: they may have insufficient funds to cover the duration of their stay in Canada, or they may have a host, but that relationship is not properly established for the visa officer, and there are questions. Okay. You don't provide the supporting documents to state the claims in your application. So, of course, anything that you're claiming, you must be able to prove. Okay. And then sometimes just simple mistakes: not providing or completing the form properly, not signing the forms. A lot of these mistakes are sometimes avoidable. Um, but these are definitely common reasons. Sometimes it's not sufficient ties. They don't feel like you're established enough in your home country. And sometimes you are, but because some of the refusals that I have looked at in the past, when clients come to me after being refused, when you look at um, the reasons for refusal, like it could have been avoided. When they say they don't have sufficient ties, you look at yourself and you're thinking, I don't have a house, I don't have a car. That doesn't mean that you can't apply for a visa, and that doesn't mean that you don't have ties, right? Ties can be proven in so many ways. There are so many creative ways that we can use to show your ties to your home country and how established you are there, right? So there are a lot of ways to do it. um, I do encourage you though, if you are thinking of doing that, do it the right way. You want it to be done right the first time, because when you have a refusal to deal with, it just it just makes your future applications a lot more tricky, a lot more complicated. Okay? So ensure that you're doing it right the first time. And if you need professional help, reach out to us. That's why we're here, and those are some of the services that we do provide. So that is our coverage of the whole visa application process. Hopefully, it has answered your questions. And just a recap, you can apply for a visa or an ETA in order to visit Canada. We mentioned that effective in September, I believe it's the 7th of September. That's a tentative date for now. Those who are vaccinated will be allowed to enter Canada for non essential purposes. Of course, there are a number of vaccines that are accepted, and there are some that are not. So you'll have to determine that you meet the requirements, and there are other requirements as well. Um, we looked at some places that you may want to visit when you stay in Canada. We touched on the validity of the passport and the visa itself, and how you can just a tip on how you can ensure that you're getting the maximum for your application, the maximum allotted period, which is the 10 years. We looked at the requirements that you'll have to meet, such as in terms of proof of funds, proof of ties, and the purpose of your visit must be clearly stated in your application. We talked about an itinerary, which you can also prepare to document your days in Canada. For example, if you're staying for 2 weeks, this is what I plan to do for these 2 weeks or these days, right? And so that will help them to better understand that, really and truly what this person is going to do in Canada is not going to cost that much, or this is how much they plan to spend, this is the budget, and so this is why they're showing this amount of money. So something like that. So we always document that in our application. And then, of course, we touched on common reasons for refusal of a visa application. All right. So for those of you who missed it, and if you're watching the replay, like I said, comment and let me know your thoughts. And if you are interested in getting our support for this or any type of application, so visitor's visa application, or a work permit application, study permit, or a permanent residence application, you can reach out to us. Send us an email, info@nccanadaimmigration.com. Just one thing to note, we usually don't work with clients unless we have done a consultation with them for the most part, so that we can determine your eligibility for the program or programs that you want to apply to before signing. So we don't just sign you up because we're saying, oh, just sign you up, just give me your money. That's not how we do it. We have to make sure, we have to do our pre-assessment to ensure that you do qualify for the thing that you want to apply to. Okay? And then we help you from there. All right, guys. So I have to check out for today. That's all that we have time to cover today. Hopefully, the information was useful, and we will check back in on Saturday when I do the recap of the immigration updates. All right. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you on Saturday. Yeah, my baby wants mommy time. Okay, guys, take care.